Hi everybody, it's Liz Bennett again. We are ready to start IMechE at 12:30, so once again, a very warm welcome to you all, and apologies those of you who've heard me say that 3 times already. But obviously a number of your colleagues have just joined us in the last few minutes or so. Okay, you have signed up for a webinar on Lean and Six Sigma with our expert on this subject, Gillian Clark, to whom I will introduce you in a moment. A couple of things. My role as host today is to monitor the chat box and the question box. So please keep your comments coming in either the chat box or the Q&A box, and I'll look at those. At any stage, if there's anything that Gillian or I say that prompts a question or a comment on your part, it would be great to have them. It's good for us to know that that you're out there. Thank you for the comments that you've made so far, and I think whatever your reason for joining us today is, and I know some of you are here to simply learn more about Lean and Six Sigma, which is great. Some of you are here because you know a bit about it and you want to apply it. Some of you are wondering, well, what can it do for me? Can it help me in my work and my career? What does it really mean if you look beyond the buzzwords? These are the comments that you have been making in the chat box. And of course, some of you have given us real specific issues that you're thinking about, and can Lean or Six Sigma help you with that? So I know that Gillian will come back to those during the course of her presentation. And indeed, the way that we have organised this afternoon is it should take about 60 minutes, depending on how many questions you have. Gillian has aimed this to be about 40 minutes worth of information for you, picking on some of your comments as we go through that, but about 40 minutes worth of information, leaving plenty of time for questions at the end if you have them. So keep them coming, because that's my role, as well as introducing Gillian to you. I'll be looking for that. And we're going to try and really leave enough time at the end so that we can be most helpful to you. So that's what we aim to do today. How we aim to do that is, in a moment I will hand over to Gillian. When for some reason I can't get the slides to move, that's it. Thank you very much. So in a moment I'll hand over to Gillian. Before I do, just a word about who Gillian is and who I am. There are photographs of both of us. My role as host today, as I've explained, I work for the Institution of Mechanical Engineers in their Learning and Development Division. As such, I manage the entire suite of programs from technical training through to management skills, soft skills, etc. And it's been my pleasure and privilege to work for the IMechE for a number of years now. Gillian, your expert for today is we couldn't have found anybody better. Gillian has worked with Lean and Six Sigma one way or another for 17 years, working significantly in the automotive and aerospace industry, and I see a number of you from those sectors too. Gillian has been through those sectors. She's been delivering Six Sigma training for the last 8 years and has worked in delivery, and in her time as an employee, has worked with a range of clients right across both the public and the private sectors. So is very experienced in a range of topics and problem resolution and process improvement using Lean and Six Sigma techniques. That's probably all you need to know about both of us at the moment. Before I hand over to Gillian to talk you through the content and what we're going to do today and the objectives for the program, how we're going to do it, is we want to hear a little bit more about you. Now, we've heard a lot about you through the chat box, which is great, but I now am going to invite you to do a poll. Rachel, if you could help me out here, my slide has frozen at the moment, so I'm not able to move on to the next slide, which will be the poll slide for people. So if you can help me out by moving that slide, Rachel, that would be great. Thank you, Rachel. And now that Rachel's got the slide, Rachel, you can also set up the poll as well. So what we want you to do is to consider this. In a moment, you'll see now on the right-hand side of your screen a list of options. I'm going to go quiet in a moment so that you can read what those options are. Then I'd like you to answer at least, to choose one option from each question. So what experience do you have with lean? And it doesn't matter what the truth is. Have you heard the term but you know nothing about it? Or have you actually rolled out programs? So read that poll, read the options, choose one under each question, and then submit, and we'll have a look to see what the results are. If any of you has an issue with that, just let me know in the chat box, but I'll go quiet for a moment while I see some results coming through. Thanks, everyone. Okay, everyone, thank you for doing that. As you can see, there are some trends there, aren't there? So not surprisingly, given the comments that you made in the chat box, a number of you, 30% or more, slightly more, heard the term but have no knowledge. Slightly more than that, seen it but not done anything formal with it, had no formal training or experience. And then there are a significant number of you who used it with support, etc. That's lean. So what experience do you have of Six Sigma? Yeah, similar sort of pattern, slightly more of you have seen it used but no formal training or experience. Well, we kind of hope that today is going to whet your appetite for that once Julian has been able to explain to you exactly what it can do for you. And then let's look finally at sort of a more balanced distribution of responses. What's the single biggest issue your organisation is focusing on at the moment? Well, Gillian, I know that you have lots to say about this too, but there's no surprise there, I think, for any of us. A significant proportion of us, nearly, well, 22%, it's about reducing costs. Of course, a very significant proportion improving quality of product or service and improving delivery, lead time, turnaround time, etc. About a third of us. And of course, you know, all of those issues are prevalent in most of our organizations, but we asked you to choose one and that's what you've done. So thank you for that. That will help us as we go through the rest of the webinar. Okay, at this stage then, I know that you're all dying to hear from Gillian to get into the presentation. So Gillian, I'm going to hand over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Liz. So hopefully you can all hear me very clearly, just as Liz gave such a wonderful introduction. I'm fascinated to see the results of the poll. It's very encouraging to hear that so many of you want to learn a little bit more about Lean and Six Sigma, and the split across the three single issues that I was asking you about. Is it costs or quality or delivery? Because that's what I want to talk about as one of the first things I'm going to we'll look at in a minute. So what am I going to cover? First thing is going to be the quality triangle, and that's where we're looking at the results of the poll. Then do a very quick introduction to the difference between Lean and Six Sigma, and then go into Six Sigma in more detail, go into Lean in more detail, and then there's that classic of, well, that's great, but which one do I use? This is where I was hoping that you've got these great ideas of what issues you want to address. So I'm going to hopefully pick out a couple of them and answer that question. Which do you use? How do you use it? Now, next slide. It's working, Liz. Fantastic, I for it to work here. Now, this is the quality triangle. You've got cost, quality and delivery, and people want at least two of these three things. I'm going to give you an example. We've had a fantastic autumn, but it's been blooming cold. And I'm after a really, really warm coat. Now I can look at a really warm, that's high class quality I'm looking for, warm coat, and I don't want to pay too much, so I'm going to be tramping around looking at online, all the different options for a warm, cheap coat. But it's going to be a bit of a pain. Or I could go to one shop, get a fabulous service, get a lovely warm coat, but it's going to cost me. So organisations are looking at which of the two do their customers particularly want. And it's a business decision at this point. Another example you can use is food. If you go to McDonald's, you're going to get cheap food, it's going to be fast, but it's not haute cuisine. If you're looking to go to a Michelin-star restaurant, you're going to get fabulous quality, fantastic service, but it's going to cost you. What this means is that as an organisation has focused on two of the things, the third one is left as the main issue. So when you've got an organisation, like almost a third are looking at delivery as an issue, it's usually the cost has been got to within the limits they want, we've got the quality right, but we're suffering with delivery. And what do you do with that? Well, Lean and Six Sigma are both problem-solving tools. So the reason I wanted to talk to start with about what problems do you use, what problems do you have, is you can then think about which tool is most appropriate. So taking each one of these in turn, that didn't move on. Let's try again. There we are. So cost, if you're looking at cost, you could be looking at you need to improve margins because you're not making enough money. And let's be honest, that's what businesses are there for. You need to increase competitiveness because your competitors are delivering something that's cheaper than you have. Or there might be external demand. So it might be everything was fine, but fluctuating exchange rates mean you're less competitive. I worked in an organisation, it's an automotive supplier, got a new factory, and they've got fantastic delivery just in time. They nailed the quality issues, but it cost them a fortune to do it. So delivery, it could be about turnaround times, it could be about service, it's not necessarily a time-based issue, or lead times. And with quality, it depends on what the quality actually is, what the customer demands. Now, Six Sigma looks to reduce variation, and that can be often used to focus in on quality issues. Lean and Six Sigma generally they're looking to remove waste, and they tend to focus in on the cost and the delivery issues. Now, this is not to say that you can't use Six Sigma for cost and delivery issues, because you can, and very effectively, and neither does it mean that you won't improve quality through using Lean. But that's one way of thinking about it. So we've talked about Lean and Six Sigma, but what actually are they? Where did they come from? Six Sigma, it started with Motorola, and it's statistically rigorous. It's a problem-solving discipline. There's a very clear methodology and a very clear process that you need to follow. Lean starts with Toyota, and it's looking at what does the customer value and how can you use the minimum amount of product, time, space, resources to achieve what the customer wants. As I put on the slide, Six Sigma practitioners often use Lean tools, and you can run a Lean project using the Six Sigma DMAIC cycle. This is where you might hear about Lean Six Sigma or Lean Sigma, and it's just using the best of both. So, I'm going to look at each of them individually, starting with Six Sigma. Now, as I mentioned before, this is about reducing variation, and it's striving for perfection. In a couple of slides, I'm going to tell you what perfection actually is. The first step is, whatever the target is defined by the customer. You can't say, this is what I want, this is what the process is capable of. The target said what it is. The customer could be your external customer, or it could be part of the business. So, once you know what the target is, if you're achieving it, you can define what that is statistically, and you're then looking to improve and manage that process based on what the customer is looking for. As I mentioned, it's a very rigorous problem-solving cycle, and it's called the IMechE. Define. Define what your problem is. Define your process. Define what you're trying to target. Measure is using the very clear measures that reflect what you're trying to achieve. Analyze is about what's the root cause of the variation. What's the real root cause of the problem? There's a lot of Six Sigma tools, many of them statistical, that are looking at how do you know you've actually solved the problem. Because once you've defined the problem, you've got the real data to work with, you've found the root cause, making an improvement should be straightforward. Once you've made that improvement, you then control it. Make sure you don't go back again. So, I mentioned before about statistically defining good. There was that question of how good is good. Is 99.9% right first time good enough? Well, it actually depends. It depends on the industry that you're in. Because 99.9% right first time is 15,000 newborn babies dropped each year in hospital. Well, obviously that doesn't happen. So therefore they're operating far higher than 99.9%. 2,000 lost articles of mail, 200,000 wrong prescriptions filled each year. Those are where you need far, far higher right first time. But to other organisations, it doesn't matter that critically. So they might be operating at 76 and they want to be at 86 or 90, and that's fine. But what Six Sigma says is what good actually is. Now, I'm sorry, don't make any apologies for this. It looks statistical because it is. What we're just looking at here is a graph that says where the line comes down to 0, that is your average of the process. It's the centre of the process is on whatever it is. And then a measure of your variation is standard deviation. Now, if your spec limit, so I'm okay if it's within plus or minus 2 millimetres if you're looking at tolerances. If your standard deviation is, if your spec limits are plus or minus 1 standard deviation, you will only get 68% of your process in spec. If you've got 2 standard deviations either side of the average, then you'll have 95% in spec, and so on. So if your process is tight within your spec, you'll get more within the spec. If it's 6 standard deviations from the mean to the nearest spec, then 99.99966% will be in spec. Now, I'm talking numbers at you. Why? Because the symbol for standard deviation is the Greek symbol sigma. 6 sigma refers to 6 standard deviations away from the mean, and that is the statistical definition of perfection. Don't worry, there's not going to be a quiz later on. But I just wanted to let you know that's where the term Six Sigma comes from. But if you've got a Six Sigma process, what are you trying to do with it? Well, the first thing is to understand what's going on in the process. If you've got a process that's all over the place, why? What's happening in there? Let's get rid of the special causes, the things that shouldn't be happening, that one-off, somebody hit the machine, there was a spike in this, there was a special cause for that, yes, but this happened, that happened. You want to smooth them out, get rid of them. You've then got a smooth graph, but it's all spread out. So you want to reduce the variation. Shrink the variation. A lot of this will then bring the process into spec. If it's not enough, you then move it to the target. That's the kind of approach you'd be looking at with Six Sigma. Typical projects, well, I've seen all sorts, absolutely all sorts. Classic, people think it only applies to machinery, and it doesn't. So yellow belt and green belts, looking at minimising travel costs, We had an admin assistant who was using it, Six Sigma, in the back office functions for travel. Eliminating till freezes in a retail organisation. Yield off a process. Black belt projects tend to be a lot bigger, a lot more complex. But if you look at the return on investment, you can get some fantastic returns on investment with this. Yellow belt, I mean, £5,000 to £10,000, that's it. I've seen that quite easily. Green belts, it's a 3-month project, 25,000, no problem with that. Black belts, you can get significant improvements, and it's statistically verifiable, because otherwise, well, I'm not happy with it as a Six Sigma project. That's important because the training is very rigorous. You need to have a significant amount of investment up front in order to get the full benefit. So a yellow belt, a couple of days. Green belt, you're talking a 10-day program, and black belt is 20 days, plus mentoring and project support. You have lots of different tools. Some of it's statistics. I mentioned some of the tools there. When you're into black belt, you're looking at program management, leadership, supporting green belts. There's a lot into the Six Sigma. Having said that, the yellow belt can give a very good baseline for many, many companies. And a lot of companies, they make sure everybody's got the yellow belt as a starter for 10. So that's an overview of Six Sigma, very quickly. We haven't got very long. I could go into it for days. Lean. Lean is a philosophy as opposed to a methodology, and it's designed to improve the responsiveness, and it's focused on what the customer wants. So what do they want, when do they want it, and how much do they want? And that's what you give them without any waste. There's 5 principles or 5 pillars of Lean. Defining value. Very similar to Six Sigma. Define what is it the customer wants. You then move into, once you know what they want, how does it get to the customer through your organisation? What's the value stream? How do you map the process? Once you know how it gets there, you want to make it flow. No reworks and double handling and back and forth and up and down and getting stuck in the system. Nice and smooth. Once you've got your process smooth, you're then looking to pull to meet the customer's demand. As they require it, it's produced, rather than in advance or just too late. And there's this understanding of you're like peeling an onion, pursuing perfection, one layer after another, gradually going through. So, within that, there are lots and lots of tools. I've just listed a few of them here, purely because these get bandied around. You start talking, oh, Lean is all about 5S, or it's all about tack times, or it's all about this, it's all about that. What it's all about is removing waste. It's about what the customer wants, when they want it, without any waste. It's about creating flow as the customer pulls and getting it at the same time every time. The key thing that Lean focuses on is waste, and getting rid of waste. This is the classic acronym that's used, Tim Woods. It says, if a product is being transported, the customer isn't getting what they value. They don't care how far you've had to move it, they just want the product at the end. If it's sitting in inventory, again, it's not being worked on. If somebody's moving themselves backwards and forwards, movement is a person, transports the product, then you're not adding value just by wandering around for it. If you're waiting for information or you're waiting for a product, then again, it's a waste. Overproduction, making more than was required, or over-processing, doing more to the product than the customer actually wanted, can cause quite significant issues. Defects are the obvious one. It causes scrap, it causes waste, it causes customer complaints. And the final one is skills, not utilising everybody's skills. So Lean is all about getting rid of those. Sort of projects that people often use are about improving efficiencies or increasing capacity. So we're doing really well, but we need to double the output. That's the sort of thing that we could be looking at. Improving the turnaround time. We were talking about, let me see, I made a note earlier. I think it was Jeff Martin, there's name check for you. You were looking at improving performance in the aerospace supply chain. And you could be looking at, well, which one is the issue? What is the problem? Because people are talking about improving performance and is it about understanding where the waste is in the system? Because if it is, then lean could be your ideal one. If you're not sure you've got any varying performance, you could be back to the Six Sigma. But it's understanding what's the customer, what do they want, map the process, understand what's going on in the process, where are the wastes, and strip them out. And you could be using just-in-time tools, you could be using 5S tools, you can use all the tools that I mentioned before that were listed earlier, and it's about understanding and getting rid of the waste. Now, all these tools can be taught on courses or workshops, and usually it's about doing it. Classroom theory is great, but supported practice really embeds it. There's less theory to learn in Lean than there is with Six Sigma. There's lots of different tools, but just going out and having a go with them really embeds the learning. So, I know that the question is, which do you use? And some people have said, is it going to be useful for me? Six Sigma, or is Lean the one that I want? This is a matrix I use for very, very rule of thumb. Like the quality triangle, it just helps you think about it in a different way. But I always look at this and say, right, either a problem is easy, you look at it and go, it can't be that difficult to do it, or it's hard. It's something that we've been struggling with for 10 years, nobody's been able to solve it. You might know the answer, well, we kind of know what we need to do, or you've got no clue whatsoever. And just taking each one of these in turn. First one, let's see, come on, there we are. You know the answer, it's easy to improve, just do it. What's stopping you? Sometimes the reason that people are being stopped from doing something is they don't feel that they can. There's some boundaries issues. Is it my job, is it somebody else's job? Classic examples, nobody's using these forms, why is everybody having to fill them in? Oh, is it my job to do it or not? Get on and get them out. Get rid of them. Stop wasting people's time. I'm struggling with moving it on. There we are. The next one, you think it should be easy to improve, but you don't know what the answer is. So this is where you need to get a few people together. Get some problem-solving groups. This is where they have some basic tools. Plan, do, check, act is classic. 8D problem-solving, often used in automotive. This is where the Six Sigma yellow belt can be slotted in, because I love using that just as basic problem-solving. Even if you're not going to roll out Six Sigma across an organisation, it gives the basic quality improvement tools that can be used for all sorts. It can be tied in with Lean, and it can be used as a baseline for making improvements as a group. Everybody uses the same language. So simple projects that are within an organisation, within a department, within a processes remit. Everybody in that process gets together, follows a clear methodology, solves the problem. So those that just do it, those are the easy ones. But you're not here to learn about them, it's about Six Sigma and Lean. So, the next slide I know the answer, but it's hard to improve. So this covers lean, but it also covers other things. IT software implementation. Just roll out a new software across the organisation. You know the answer is just roll it out. But it's a nightmare to do. Just decommission a factory. I think any time anybody says the word just, you know it's not going to be easy. But lean can be in here. We just need to smooth the flow out. We just need to implement 5S. We just need to reduce the time it takes for this project, for this process. You know it's going to be a process mapping and a waste reduction exercise, but it's not easy. So it's in that quadrant. As I said, there will always be exceptions to the rule. I use this as a rule of thumb. So example projects I've got there are reducing turnaround time between products, finding space to introduce a new product. These are just tools that you could be using. The great thing about this is that the members of the team doing the work don't have to have specific training. As long as it's facilitated by a lean coach or a lean champion who's had the understanding and understands what they're going through, you can take the team through it step by step as a very practical workshop. But it does often require cultural change because it's a new way of working, it's a new way of thinking. And if some people are starting to strip waste out of their process, it can have knock-on effects of other areas. And in some organisations, if they've tried to implement lean and failed, it's because they haven't addressed the cultural change. I'm sure that some of you guys have experienced that if you've tried that before. So the last one, I was kind of go, if you have no idea where you're starting, Six Sigma. You don't know the answer, you don't know where to start, and it's a nightmare to do. So, the joy of this is it's got a very clearly prescribed problem-solving process. So you start defining the problem. It's like, okay, we've been wrestling with this for 10 years. I've got one came through I saw earlier. Mike Manier, I think his surname is saying that there's a lot of health and safety near misses. So what's the problem you're trying to define? Trying to reduce the number of near misses? Are they in a particular area? So you can start defining exactly what the issue is and saying, okay, how do we measure a near miss? Are all of them being measured, or are we not actually keeping tally of this? Because we could have incidents that don't count as near misses. So you start thinking about the measure. Where are they coming from? The analysis, what's the root cause? You know, something like health and safety near misses, I would be dropping it into there because we don't know what the answer is, and it's a bit of a tough one. So, oh, sorry, I'm going back a slide.
Okay. Gillian, I'm sorry to interrupt you there. If I may interrupt you, Gillian, it's Liz. Hi. Just before you go on to the summary, and I know you're not quite finished with this slide there.
No, well, I wasn't meaning to go on.
No, I know. But if I may, now that I have interrupted, I'll continue.
Oh, do carry on.
Yeah, there was a couple of comments and questions that I noticed from the chat box, and I know you've just picked up on Mark, which is fantastic. Just as a generic, Dorian also stated at the beginning of the webinar that he is working on rolling out a business transformation program, and one of his reasons for logging in was, is it lean, is it Six Sigma, will both be useful, would either be useful? That's quite a generic one, I know, a business transformation program, but are you able to comment on that at this stage?
Oh, absolutely. I think I spotted that one as well earlier. It was, am I right that it was a lean, he's looking at a lean transformation, and can Six Sigma be useful?
Mm-hmm. That's the one.
Yeah. That's the one. Yes, I would say with that, I would keep with the lean, because if you already started the rollout transformation, don't confuse anybody. But within that, you could use the Six Sigma problem solving. So if you've got specific problems, I would put in perhaps some training with, say, with the yellow belt, just that everybody's got the problem-solving tools, because Lean is great at doing sort of practical workshops and stripping out waste, but it doesn't have that robust problem-solving methodology. So if you wanted to introduce a bit of Six Sigma into it, that's where I would be focusing in on, because you've already started with a Lean transformation.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Gillian. And I know that there will be lots of other people on today's webinar who are facing similar business transformation issues. So while that was a specific in response to Dorian's comment, please, I'm hoping it's helping everybody else who's on the session too. And Dorian and Mark, Gillian has addressed a couple of specifics that you had there. It would be great to get your feedback in the chat box as to whether it was helpful. Just one more, if I may, Gillian. I know you commented earlier that Peter posted a comment about his issue was particularly around why discrimination law has variation in outcomes and how services could be delivered more efficiently. Again, is that the right time to ask that question on behalf of Peter?
Yeah, no, go for it. And just sort of, it's one of those things. I think perhaps if I'd have had the matrix slide again to say, look, let's put it back up, let's do that. Putting it there and saying, okay, where do we start with this? Okay, so why does discrimination law have different outcomes? Well, I have no idea. I honestly would not know where to start. Because of that, I'd be going with Six Sigma. I'd be saying, okay, let's define exactly what are you talking about with this. When you say different outcomes, what kind of outcomes are you talking about? How can you very, very clearly define what it is you're focusing in on? So I'll be in that world, because the define stage is so clear in Six Sigma. It's a real problem-solving methodology, and that's where I'd be going. I mean, I picked one up as it fits, but it's quite a challenge, as I'm sure you understand, Liz, about having the slides going and trying to see the
of course it is, yeah.
The chat box. Every so often something caught my eye, and I saw Steph Nixon right at the beginning saying he's in textile manufacture, he or she, I'm not sure with Steph, and which to use. And this is where I go, I don't know, because it depends. It depends on what your issue is. Because if you've got an issue with the quality of the product, then I might be looking at Six Sigma. But if you've got a problem with reducing costs, increasing delivery, I'd be looking at Lean. And now I've seen a question coming up there.
Yes, go ahead then. Yeah, me too.
You've just spotted it as well.
Yes, from Kudakwashe.
That's it. When we're saying Six Sigma, isn't it that we are the acceptance range for defects and in the end reduce the quality of product? No. The point with Six Sigma is the customer defines the quality. So the customer defines what is acceptable or not. And there will always be a small band. And you say, it's plus or minus 2 millimeters, or it's plus or minus whatever it is. 2 millimeters or 3 days or 30 seconds, whatever it is, it's defined by the customer. And Six Sigma is about you have to hit that whether or not you like it. And if your process isn't capable, Six Sigma will tell you that. At the moment your process isn't capable, and therefore you have to do something substantial to improve it. So it's certainly not about reducing the quality of the products. And it's not saying that there's an acceptable range of defects. It's only acceptable if the customer says it's acceptable, and if the customer's accepting it, you're still aiming for a target, which is bang on exactly what the customer wants.
That's very clear, Gillian. Thank you.
So
And in a moment,
passionate about it.
which is why we're asking you to do this. That's just what we love about you. In a moment, I'm going to go quiet again, but before I do, I have to comment on some of the comments that are coming through. So thank you. Thank you for your thank yous on behalf of Gillian. So Mark, thanks. Peter, thank you. And just look at Mark's comment in the Q&A. I've got this wonderful image, Mark. Yes, Mark has said, thank you for answering the question, Gillian. It was so useful. I just shouted to the health and safety manager to come over and listen. I've got this wonderful image now. Talk about interaction. That's great.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, it's so nice because, you know, doing a webinar like this, it kind of feels like you're talking into the void.
Yes.
So getting feedback like that is fantastic. Well, I was just going to sort of conclude with a summary and then ask for questions. So now's the opportunity to ask any more questions. So, just very quickly, in summary is, what's the difference between Six Sigma and Lean? Six Sigma is structured, it's problem solving. The aim is to reduce variation so that the customer gets what they want. Because the wider the variation, the more chance you have of it getting out of spec and improving all aspects of quality. Now, quality can include the cost and the delivery, which is why I say Six Sigma can be used for all. Lean, it's waste reduction, and it's a philosophy with a load of tools with it, often targeting cost and delivery, because specifically Lean says, get rid of the waste. The value add is fine in and of itself. Because I'll look at many organisations and say, look, you know how to make the product. Or an example I had was a call centre. It's a technical call centre as well. So the guys can be on the line for 2 minutes, 20 minutes. I said, I'm not even going to go there. You're the experts. Take as long as you need on the phone. But what we're going to do is all the waste around filling in the forms, doing the IT systems, all the blur that was going on around it. So Lean tends to go, the quality, if it's value add and it's what the customer wants, we'll leave it alone. Six Sigma might be, let's reduce the variation in it as well. Why does it matter? So you can use the right tools. So you've got more to choose from. You can solve more problems. It's fantastic. I mean, I love it. I love both. You can tell from my enthusiasm. I know that, you know, what do you do next? Where do you go? Hopefully you've caught a little bit of my enthusiasm. I would say, if you wanted to look at problem-solving groups, you could look at 8D problem-solving, which I love. Yellow Belt, which I also love. A lot of the tools are similar. It's a different structure. Leading teams, facilitating, getting people to feel confident with it. From a Lean, Lean overview, Lean practitioner, tailor-made Lean workshops, get somebody in to do it with your organisation, to actually talk you through it and support you. Or Six Sigma, it's more it's classroom-based, far more than Lean. Lean can be done sort of out on the shop floor. Six Sigma, you are definitely in a classroom with supported projects. But that's where you'd go to next. I'm sure that Liz would let you know what the IMechE is involved in soon, but if you've got any other questions about the Six Sigma and the Lean, now you've got your chance. Go on, go ask, whatever you want. Ooh. Let's just see if something pinged up.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Gillian.
I've just seen one coming in.
From Peter?
No, from Ahmed Nasser. So can you use Six Sigma model as operation excellence models within hydrocarbon production facilities? Okay, it's John Robinson's it looks for a problem solving rather than a governance model. That's a big question. Yes, you can use Six Sigma as an operation excellence model. It's a bigger rollout at that point, because you're looking at what do you want from governance point of view? How are you structuring that to define? What are you trying to do with it? That is a really big question on there. It is problem solving, but you have to change the scale of your problem, if that makes sense, and say, okay, what are we trying to achieve from a governance point of view? Therefore, what do we need? How are we going to measure it? What can we put in place? because you'd be using Six Sigma, but if you're going to design a new government system, you could be using, instead of the DMAIC process, you'd be using the DMADVA process, which is define, measure, analyze, design, and validate. It's going to go technical at this point, so I'm not going to go into it too much different.
But I think you're indicating, though, Gillian, that there are a range of complexities here, and of course there's no easy answer because you're dealing with real business issues, and there's no simple solution. There's never a black or white, but there are tools such as you've been explaining for the last 40 minutes. We have some more comments and questions coming through, Gillian. You may have seen, I think this is more a comment from Peter. Perhaps an implied question. Publicly funded legal services have two customers. The driver is lean for the benefit of one, but with a loss of actual outcome for the other, therefore needs Six Sigma?
Six Sigma, yes, you could well do. But again, this is where you have to think about who your customer is, and you've got both. So value is defined by the customer, but actually you have two that you need to optimize. And optimization of processes has a tendency to go, it's the complex one. So you'd be looking at your Six Sigma, your very clear methodology. You could be using some of the Six Sigma tools. Don't be misled. A Six Sigma project doesn't have to be very stats heavy. It can be, but it's thinking of the framework with that one. Some Jeff Minor says, well, people with problems tend to fixate on a solution. Oh, yes. We know what the problem is. The problem is we need another machine. No. That's a pretend solution. This is where your yellow belt, drum it into people. Here's your problem-solving methodology. You do not deviate. You follow the tools. You use them. You get the root cause. And just make them accountable to the process. So no question on that one. That was get them through the yellow belt, if nothing else. James Kusana, cell therapy, looking at making the process of getting the product out more efficiently. Cost and delivery, yes, you could be using the lean there. You don't have to use a hybrid approach, because if you've got your quality fine, you just go, right, you just don't want to get rid of that. Keep your quality and think, well, where's the waste coming in the rest of the process? So you might have, you're fine about the actual cell therapy work you're doing, but what else is going on around it? How long is it taking to get from this stage to that stage? How long are you waiting for information? So I would be looking at lean as that for a start. Because if you've got your quality nailed already, you don't need to worry about it.
Okay, thank you. And then a really helpful comment from Ben to Jeff that I have to agree with, Gillian, but over to you to comment.
Oh no, I was going to say comment with that, yes. Particularly in engineering, we love fixing things and solving problems, jumping in. Yes, the Six Sigma methodology, don't jump to conclusions. And the other one is, once you've made the improvement, make sure it sticks. The control phase is really, really important. Monitor it. Did it work? If it did, nail it in place and share it with other people, because you might have exactly the same problem on another piece of kit.
Excellent, Gillian. Thank you very much. And
I've got one question from Dorian. Is Six Sigma necessary for continuous improvement? No, it's not.
Okay.
You could have a lean program, and that's a continuous improvement program. You don't have to have a hybrid approach. You could have pure Six Sigma, you can have pure lean, you can use both. But understand what it is that you want, and then you use the best tool for it.
Okay. And Gillian, I'm aware you may be getting some questions privately, so my apologies. Was that the last one that you've had?
That was just in the Q&A. I picked it up then. All I would say is, if anybody's got an absolute burning question that has been missed, drop it now into the chat.
Yes.
So if we've missed it, we apologise. And then Liz, I'll pass it over to you. But if there's anything that somebody pings up, flag it to me. But otherwise, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay. Thanks, Gillian.
So
Thank you. Yeah, Julian, thank you so much. And there's only another couple of slides, so it would have been fine for you to keep control. But guys, let me echo what Julian has just said there. Whilst I've been monitoring the chat box and the Q&A, if we have missed anything, it wasn't intentional. It wasn't because it was too difficult to answer. So please copy and paste it, repaste it back in so that we can pick it up. Gillian signposted you to the slide that you're seeing now, and of course it's my job to highlight that to you again. How do we learn more? Peter, you've just prompted what's on this slide. How do you learn more? You do what Gillian says. Sign up for one of the programs. If you've got a specific question, of course, ask it now or afterwards, but sign up. There are several options available for you, including later on this month, should you be ready for Yellow Belt. But there's Lean, there's Six Sigma. So all you've got to do is get in touch with training@IMechE.org, as it says at the bottom of the slide there. And let me also say this to you. Several people posted questions about, can we get the slides? I'm not going to assume that everybody who was on this at some stage, 135 people, want the slides. So if you really do want the slides, two things. Remember, they are copyright. They're Gillian's. They're copyright, so they're for your information, but honour the copyright, as I know you will. And email us at training@IMechE.org, as it says on the slide. If you really want the slides, we'll send them to you, but I'm not going to make any assumptions. Okay, so please do follow through now that Gillian has made you nearly as passionate as she is. Follow through on that. And as I said at the very beginning of today's webinar, let me flag to you our next webinar, the first in the series for 2017. And next time, it will be on this very difficult, sometimes difficult subject, I should say, of giving and receiving feedback, because we're not always great at receiving it, and often we find it a real challenge to give feedback too. So it's true for all of us, it's true for companies. Every company I work with is trying to build a feedback-rich culture. We know it's high on the agenda. What stops us, and what tools can we employ that will help us give feedback? So 17th of January, same time slot, 12:30 GMT. We'd love to see you there. And Rachel has posted a link in the chat box if you want to click on it now and sign up straight away. A couple of comments coming through. Great that you want to receive the slides, but do email training@IMechE.org. I won't monitor this chat box to pick up comments on, can I have the slides? Send the request into training and we'll honour them that way. Okay, Gillian, I want you to have the last word, really, because that was a fabulous session. That went down really well. So by all means, Gillian, take the microphone again.
Okay. Okay, am I on?
Yes, you are, Gillian. We can hear you.
Sorry, I had a technological problem at that point.
Okay.
Thank you very much for all the wonderful comments and the interaction. I'll just echo Liz saying, if you want the slides, please, please, please email them, and they will send them on to you. If you want to know more, there are other training programs, but don't be limited. Don't be limited by the training that's advertised by the IMechE. The IMechE does a fantastic range of programs. They can do it in-house. They can tailor it. If you want a bit of Lean, a bit of Six Sigma, go for it. So find out exactly what you want and ask the questions, because, you know, if you're really interested, we can have a conversation. I'm sure, Liz, you'd echo with that as well, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely, Gillian. Absolutely. Yeah, the slide I showed a moment ago was about the open programs, but we're extremely flexible with your help, of course, and we can run in-company programs. I noticed a comment in the chat box, so it's nice not to have to travel to London from Cumbria. Well, you don't have to travel to London for anything. We can come to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've not been to Cumbria for a while.
So, actually, Gillian, with a couple of minutes that we have left, I have just noticed another question from Uju. How does TQM fit into Six Sigma? Do you have time to answer that in a couple of minutes?
I do indeed, I can do. Well, TQM, I would say, is almost as a tool. I'd put it under the lean banner as part of the 5S and the TQM. However, you could use it as a tool to improve a problem that has been identified by Six Sigma. So it's just saying we want to put TQM in, which is total quality. God, Lord, I've got myself muddled up with TPM, Total Preventative Maintenance. I apologise, but there's all these acronyms. The total quality management is what you're talking about. How does that fit in? It fits in just fine because TQM, you could argue it's either a precursor or it's a separate strand. It uses very similar tools to a certain extent, but it doesn't have such a strong, defined problem-solving methodology. I apologise, I asked two questions there for the price of one.
Which just reinforces what value people get from you, Gillian. Okay, I'm going to wrap up because we have, there's 2 minutes to go until the formal end of the presentation, and I don't see any other questions coming through. So, Gillian, on behalf of everybody who was here for the last hour, thank you so much for taking your time to share your expertise today. A lot of people have got a lot of benefit out of this. So thank you again, and everybody, I'm going to lead a virtual round of applause for Gillian. So, and I'm hoping that you're sitting at your desk and you're doing the same thing. So thank you to everybody for attending. Thanks to Gillian, and we really look forward to seeing you in London, in Cumbria, or on the next webinar. Thanks, everybody.